Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Vynora Effect. I'm one of your hosts, Haleigh Overseth of Frankie's Podcast Network, and I'm here with Alicia Maximo of Vynora
Hello.
herself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello,
Thank you for
hello.
the warm welcome.
And today we're joined again by our friend Walt Alfred, the inventor of the Ally Power hydrogen energy solution that you have heard us talk about before. Hello, Walt. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you very much, Haleigh. Hi, Alicia. Good to see you again.
Hello. Good to see you again. Well, welcome back to the Vynora Effect. We're more than happy to have you back on here just to dive in a little bit to LA Power. What has your journey been like so far these last couple of months, and where do you see LA Power going in the future? And I find that I would love to get your opinion while we dive into it. How are we? How are how's the population going to react to Ally Power as it's getting more exposure, more popular, more of the main basis of the clean energy solution of the future?
That's a great question, Alicia.
Mhm.
So we have a different take on where energy is going to go and where we're going to source it and how logistically we are going to provide to our customers that consistent power that they're looking for.
Mhm.
There is a shift in the industry from fossil fuels to more renewable sources of energy that has undergone from the last few decades. This shift has been marked by a number of growing pains in regards to what that means for the energy grid. And we saw that most recently in the Iberian Peninsula with with Spain and Portugal
Mhm.
having some issues with their own grid due to the renewable energy. The consistency of power, the ability to produce electricity on demand 24/7 has been something of a staple since the Industrial Revolution.
Of
And,
course. Mhm.
and being able to replicate that without producing any greenhouse gases, I think, is the ideal that everybody
That froze.
that you have to constantly be educating that
Mhm.
potential customer about. And it's really great to find a solution that you think checks all the boxes, but what does it really mean for that customer when he's in charge of thousands of employees that are then going to be reliant on your solution on a day-to-day basis to actually execute their own jobs? So that's a
Mhm.
really key figure in any type of conversation with a potential customer, because you're talking about electricity, you're talking
Mhm.
about base energy needs that are going to run a factory.
Right.
You need to have a consistent solution that is able to provide that comfort and stability to the entire organization.
Mhm. That's a really good point. That's an amazing point, Walt. I find that it's so important to highlight the capabilities, but also within the population and the education behind once your system is implemented into like I would say the energy ecosystem. What is that going to look like for everyone and educating the masses of, instead of, your electric bill skyrocketing to a certain amount and you see the shift happening. We all see it happening where when it comes to like electricity bill payments, things like that, towards the population. Speaking future energy and future costs, it's really nice to see that Ally Power is taking the reins on that and putting yourself in a position where it's going to be more accessible to find that information out and provide the population of, there's hope for the future, as far as going back decades when there's a possibilities to have free energy and free electricity. Now we're constructed to pay electricity when we should be not be paying for free water electricity. That's just my opinion personally. I would love to get Haley's opinion on that as well. Um, I was just thinking that I really enjoy and I'm really admired by what Ally Power is doing, and that you're educating the masses on that. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of this, a part of what this energy solution is going to be looking like 5, 10 years from now. And I think that what you're doing now is so monumental for what's to come and the shift that's happening. There's going to be a lot of naysayers out there, of course, that just want to go down that regular route of the mundane, just keep the same energy solution. It's fine. But we're really getting to a point where it's not fine anymore. It's kind of getting outdated. And Allied Power is the solution that's building for the future. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. And I think that you're really at the pinpoint of all this, of what the energy solution is going to look like and how it's going to be monetized towards the masses in different infrastructures and including in different countries. My next question for you is, how are you thinking about like public-private partnerships, especially with I would say, multi-populated countries or governments looking to decarbonize with allied power?
We are certainly open to public-private partnerships
Mhm,
in a number of different countries where we have some ongoing conversations in that regard.
mhm,
The intersection of electricity and energy with governments is always very crucial.
mhm,
The fact that we have large trade agreements based on the amount of energy that's going to be transferred from one country to another just speaks to how important it is for us to continue as a human civilization to have these flows of energy cross borders. We we see that in multiple industries, in data centers and in
mhm,
transportation, in energy security, in infrastructure, all these are intersecting right now in the great transition that is undergoing. And we feel like we're at that inflection point and at a good our technology meets a lot of those needs for a lot of those
mhm,
different industries.
mhm,
One of the interesting conversations that I just had this week with a potential customer was that when I was showcasing the technology alongside some of my teammates in Asia, they
mhm,
were asking, what's wrong with this system?" They
mhm.
they they really asked. That it's great that you show the highlights and the positives, but now we really want to bring this over to our technical team, and we want to say, like on a day-to-day basis, what could potentially go wrong with this system.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at other solutions, other things that have occurred in the past. Other technology solutions have been very consistently stable for a long period of time. Oil and gas works and is cheap, and that's why it's been so successful over the
Right.
years.
Mhm,
But as we transition away from that, we need to be able to showcase that those solutions are going to be able to work on a day-to-day basis, and the customer is going to be able to work within that framework. So
mm,
that's definitely something that we are actively looking at in Asia specifically. In the Philippines, for example, we have to get our technology cleared by the Department of Energy in order for us to work with certain partners. And once we've done that, they will suggest our technology to potential customers, potential companies that want to partner alongside us to deploy our technology. So that is
mm,
certainly something that we have been in process, getting all the approvals and making those meetings happen, because it's important for us to have both government and the private sector behind a solution in order for us to be successful in the long term.
right. Well, yes, I love that. I like that they are really open to this idea of the change, but how it's going to trickle down into their ecostructure, and their ecosystem. I was just about to ask also too, like why hydrogen? Why now? Why not stick to oil and gas, even though the oil and gas is ruining our current infrastructure or our planet per se, right? Where we are searching now to scale to go to Mars, but honestly, I feel like the most of the population would like to be on Earth. Right, Haley?
I want to stay here on Earth. Earth is an awesome planet. I'm not trying to leave, so I appreciate that Walt's out there trying to help us sustain this beautiful planet that we all share.
Right?
I was going to ask, because this is, something that we did chat about a little bit before the podcast, and like Alicia and I had a conversation a while back, just kind of looking at different energy solutions, and wind energy, for example. I think we talked about last time just a little bit as well. It does take up a lot of space having those wind farms, and this is again kind of that question of the ecosystem of clean energy. If you are switching from something like a solar panel system or a wind energy windmill system, the question that I think a lot of folks would have come up is what happens to the workforce in those industries, sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
So where you're implementing your energy solutions, when you're sort of considering other energy companies that might implement them, or when you're considering, again, something like the windmill turbine industry, where you would have workers that are assembling them, places that are like welding companies that would not necessarily have that work anymore. Like, how would you sort of envision the way that Ally Power would provide opportunities sufficient for, those industries to sort of not feel as though they're going to be, I don't want to say like in trouble, but how regulatory things get when the workforce is affected?
Sure. So I think that for the foreseeable future, the economies for wind and solar are going to still be very strong. There are still going to be a lot of projects that are going to be going in that direction, and they're they're not going to be detrimentally affected by anything that Ally Power can bring to the market in regards to our share of the energy industry. What we really are focused on right now are projects that are really tailor-made for a solution that requires a very small footprint. It requires baseload 24/7 power, and it requires something that can feed off other industries as well in the surrounding area. So the fact that we don't just generate electricity, but we also generate hydrogen, we also generate potable water, we generate sodium aluminate. All these things can factor into a decision whether or not to go in that direction. One conversation that we had was with a brewing company, and they brew beer, and they're thinking about replacing their natural gas fired boiler with our boiler,
Mm.
because then it would be a zero emission solution, and we'd be able to provide the heat necessary to brew the beer. And that's something that just a wind turbine can't do, a solar panel can't do, but that's something that we could do as a unique feature for our technology in terms of implementing our solution. But we don't feel like we're going to be taking away business from solar or wind anytime soon, in that there are going to be large purchases of those products to deploy large solar fields, large wind turbine fields uh, across uh, wide areas of land. So
Mhm.
that's not something that we are considering in terms of hurting the economy of or the workers who are going to be building those solar panels or wind turbines. We feel that we're going to be targeted in how we are going to be entering into the market specifically to tailor it for the customer's needs.
Mm.
So, like, one of the things kind of coming up for me as you're talking about this, again, we've talked about it before just a little bit, that, I'm from rural South Dakota, for example. So one of the things when you say like a brewery, we've got small like breweries, microbreweries here. There's a lot of them in like, Wisconsin. I lived in Wisconsin for a while. Like, what other kind of spaces? Because the one thing coming up for me is small communities, small towns. If you were going to implement like the hydrogen energy solution for a small town in rural America, wherever, I mean, would you see that as something that might sort of help revitalize small towns a little bit, in terms of, obviously you're lowering energy costs, you have a small population in the town. I mean, these are the kind of things I think of. Like, we've got schools that are closing because you don't have enough people in the small towns that have enough kids going to the schools. So are you looking at, or how would you sort of see Ally Power Energy Solution fitting into sort of, helping to support smaller communities to continue to sustain, even, and because again, they're kind of shrinking in America.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that, Haley, like, as far as like give us sort of like a walkthrough of the Ally Power Station and the concept of, how is it designed to revolutionize how fuel is delivered to those communities and those small communities, or even bringing it all together, solar power, hydrogen power, and then, making sure that like they can work very well together to support those communities as well.
Sure, that's a great question, Haley and Alicia. So, what we've found in some recent conversations we've had is that there is a growing desire to turn a lot of these small towns into places that house data centers, because they have in some of their old warehouses space that could house a data center, and the workforce is already there that could be able to service a data center. And what is really missing from, in terms of a final component piece, is how do we power that data center without producing the negative effects that you don't want in a small town. So
Mhm.
one of the things that we'd like to do is partner with some data center owners and operators who are looking to fund projects in those small towns to build out data centers, and then power them with the Ally Power solution. From a logistics point of view, it makes a lot of sense for us to do it that way, because again, you're going to have a very small footprint in a small town. You need the base load power to power a data center. It's not something that you can just turn on and off with a renewable electricity source. And you're also going to be creating a whole new economy, essentially,
Mhm.
with the transportation of your byproduct and your feedstock in and out of the town. So there's a lot of positives in working with small towns in that type of business model, and we would like to certainly pursue that in the future.
Mhm. I honestly think that the data center concept is really expanding. Currently, of course, in Chantilly, Virginia, and like Virginia has a lot of land. There's a bunch of data centers, and they're huge, and they're building more and more of them. And it's like thinking, there's so much space. What more can we do with these data centers, or what more, I would say, eco-friendly solutions or products that we can improvise with those data centers. So I do like that concept, is that once there's space, there is an opportunity to fill that space to help those like smaller communities, especially with a place like Virginia where there's so much land, and there's, Amazon here, there's the data centers here, but, what's fueling the data centers, and how can we, exactly what Haley was saying, how can we use those resources to help the smaller communities in those towns? Um, it's fun fact, just saying this really quick. I think somewhere in Japan, they brought up this concept of taking their data centers and submerging it underwater so the water can help cool the system. So they're really thinking outside the box as well, because again, with the data centers, it costs more energy, more, I would say coolant to cool the data center. So it's like it's kind of defeating the purpose of creating the data center, and then they have to spend more energy of like cooling down the data center. So we may be on to something when we're connecting globally, of looking at what other countries are doing and taking a page out of their book of, as far as submerging a data center in the ocean, and thinking like, oh, this is an interesting concept, and probably more of um, an affordable concept of submerging a data center into the ocean so it can cool naturally with the water and the cooling system in the water, however that works. Just wanted to bring up that fun fact. And I really see the future, what you're speaking about, Ally Power and delivering to the communities, that it's happening. It's already happening. So I appreciate you sharing that, Walt. Haley, over to you. Any other questions or anything about the communities in your town?
Well, I am loving the submerged water servers thing. I think
Right.
that's really great because again, the Ally Power solution, one of your
Mhm.
byproducts is potable water. So like I'm sure there's a way you could, utilize that to keep the data centers cool inland where you don't necessarily have the oceans at your disposal to just be putting stuff in. But then I'm interested in, again, sort of what ways or what sort of things would you maybe pitch, I guess I would say, to smaller towns and places that could benefit from implementing this kind of solution? Because when you talk about like the servers and things like that, that's something I hadn't really thought of, but that there are a lot of data centers and like server centers that are, being built and need to be built because of like the prevalence of AI and how computing has to be supported for like the various different like AI things that are coming out. And I know that, and maybe this is more for Alicia or for, Walt, even like we need to bring Jackie in here and ask her some questions about it. But just the amount of, servers and data centers and like computing capacity we're going to be needing with how quickly AI is developing, and being able to sort of like pitch that kind of an idea to smaller communities, like it could potentially revitalize them to have both of these things implemented and available. And like you said, there's a workforce right there, and it could kind of help build up those smaller communities again that have fizzled out. So I'm just kind of wondering what other bright ideas like do you have that go along with this? Because there's all these things that I hadn't thought of previously. I'm enjoying this.
Yes. So from a logistics standpoint of a small community, the thing that we really want to concentrate on and want to avoid is brownouts. And this can happen when you have too much of a surge of demand of electricity, that it will create a short circuit essentially in the grid, and to the point where it may affect homes, it may affect businesses. You don't want to have a situation where you are now trying to create a new industry with data centers, and that has ripple effects negatively with what is already in place, especially in a small town. I can see an emergency situation, developing where you lose power to a hospital, for example, because the data center is overloading. That's something that you definitely want to avoid. So when you're trying to build out a new industry, which is going to help a small town, you certainly want to have as a standard the energy solution that is going to be able to provide a base load to that data center that you're going to be building, or any other type of industry, so that it's not going to take away that electricity from the grid. The logistics of our operation are such that you literally can drive the feedstock right into where you're going to be powering the data center. So our reactors and our steam turbines are going to be turning on right next to the data center itself. So it's going to be a very short distance for the electricity to travel from our generation system to where it's actually going to be expended. And that's going to prevent a lot of these surges on the grid that you see with other industries piling online. So this occurred, for example, in California, with electric battery vehicles charging in certain situations. There is a real threat when you try to onboard so many different systems onto your electrical grid. And that's something that we want to have a solution for prior to actually implementing a system-wide change like the one that we're forecasting.
So that opens up a couple other avenues for me then. Obviously there's the the power stations and things like that for, the electric cars and electric vehicles. And I know that is something that does come up as a question. Do we necessarily have right now currently the infrastructure across the United States to support that? And that's like, again, thinking of things like even the infrastructure bill that was passed a few years ago that they're still implementing for like implementing, fiber internet and making sure that everywhere has high speed internet. Right. So in tandem to what you're talking about, all these things that are kind of ramping up, as it were, right? That do you see Ally Power as having some potential, and this energy solution as having some potential to kind of be a bridge between, the sort of energy solutions that we have currently and kind of helping support that, again, just like that exponential growth we're seeing of, the need for data centers, the need for like these electric vehicle charging stations, that these other sort of implementations are happening with clean energy in different ways. And there's, our current infrastructure grid that we have is obviously kind of struggling to keep up, for lack of a better way to say it. So how do you see, Allied Power being able to kind of help bridge where that energy gap kind of is currently?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways that we could be useful. There's the retrofit power plant model, where there are existing power plants that are being powered by natural gas or coal or some other type of fossil fuel, or even as big as a nuclear power plant that is being decommissioned because the surrounding area just doesn't want to go nuclear anymore. There are existing infrastructure surrounding those plants that you can utilize that are able to transition to our way of generating the heat, and now suddenly you have a zero emission solution, where before you had something that was going to produce something that is nuclear or a fossil fuel based
I
particulate.
was going to say, we like the no carbon emissions and the no energy footprint much more
Yes.
than we like nuclear waste.
Right. That's very true.
Yes. So that's one way that we're looking at it, and that's more of a long-term, large-scale electricity generation need in terms of the transition. There are also smaller ways that we can target specific industries so that they don't overstep the grid and create those blackouts and brownouts that we were talking about previously. Those would be behind the meter. So if a warehouse, for example, wants to be built, but they need an electricity source, they could partner with us to be that electricity source specifically, so that they don't have to be reliant on the grid. They don't have to create connection with the grid. That's also something that is really creating a bottleneck right now, is time, and time to get connected to the grid itself, especially in the United States, is a real factor when companies are looking to expand. And if you have a 7-year timeline, for example, to get connected to the grid in order for you to build your data center, for example, that may be prohibitive from a financing standpoint. Do investors really want to wait 7 years in order for you to actually get the power that you need in order to power your data center? And
Right.
in many instances, that answer is no. So they're looking for other ways to power their data center that's not going to be reliant on the grid itself. And that has a two-edged sword, right? It's good that you have another electricity source that's going to be able to provide that power, so now you're not draining resources away from the grid. But again, you have to find that consistent source of power, and it has to be baseload. So your options are limited as to what your choices can be if you want to be zero emission and you want to be 24/7. So we are one of those solutions.
I love that. One of the other
Yeah.
things that's that Alicia and I talk about a lot, because Alicia, the Vynora effect, big into health and wellness tourism, obviously. So we
Of
talk a
course.
lot about like the, kind of health resort retreat center type places, and also like smaller medical facilities or international different kind of medical facilities. So
Right. Also like
with
cannabis plants as well, and people that are looking for clean energy solutions, but also to power through their cannabis factories of growing the natural plant itself. Just wanted to add that in as far as what
yeah,
you
oh,
thinking
absolutely.
about. So
Well, and
there's
so that's
people. Yeah, there's people looking for the solution, but again, it's like the concept, exactly what you're saying about Walt, is the timing. It's like the profitability, the revenue stream, but the timing of implementing this solution into their ecostructure and then having it be, of course, save the planet, but at the same time, they have to make a profit as well. So it goes like hand in hand. It's just it has its pros and its cons. But as we're moving forward, as we're educating the masses, it looks like there's more pros. There's going to be more pros as far as like the people, the planet, and the infrastructure of that, and like less the cons are kind of just going to be shading away when it comes to being totally dependent on oil and gas. I'm sorry, Haley, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I
you're
was
good.
just
I love it. 'Cause
channeling into that type of concept there. You were
I know
saying,
you get
go ahead.
excited.
We've been
Well,
speaking about health and wellness and how they're looking for this type of solution. Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of just my question to Walt a little bit. So,
Mhm.
for the energy solution you have, what kind of impacts or where do you see it being most impactful or most useful for things like the tourism industry, for example? Like, do you see it as being something useful for resorts and hotel chains? You've obviously said, mentioned about the transportation industry, but as far as like global tourism and how this could sort of support, I guess I would say more of a global community, like a more of a capacity for a global community to thrive. As Alicia and I do talk about, where do you kind of see the Allied Power Energy solution being able to do exactly like what Alicia's saying, to really not just be a green energy solution that, like, yeah, of course, makes companies look good because people are looking for that and want you to be good to the planet, but where can it also like really boost things up for maybe different countries or again communities as far as like in different kind of facets of these industries that could be affected by energy?
Great question. So we are actively talking with several different resorts, and what we found is that they are suffering. They have a dearth of solutions right now of what can actually work. They may not have the land area to have a solar farm, and wind doesn't really work from them either. So they're reliant right now on a diesel generator that may be aging, that maybe be expensive to continue to buy diesel. So when they look at our solution, there are several positive benefits in that it is like a diesel generator, a small footprint that would be able to provide their electricity needs, but again, without the greenhouse gases. And the one of the key factors that come into this decision actually is air conditioning. Can you really have a resort that is going to be without air conditioning? Uh, the answer really is no, if you
Probably
want to
not.
keep customers, right?
Right.
So you definitely want to have a stable power source that is able to fit within that resort, and going to be consistently be able to provide you with base load power in order for you to maintain the business at the level that your customers have already desired and come to expect. So that's definitely something that we are looking at very seriously, and we do have active conversations with those resort owners in order for us to implement our systems there as well.
One of the things, this is kind of a silly thought that's coming to me right now. Let's not be surprised, right? I'm kind of also thinking though that having this sort of energy solution that is standalone, that does have that 24/7 capacity to provide power, that also does increase like the security of a location or of a power grid, right? That you
Mhm.
don't. So I'm thinking also then of, maybe places that have like higher level secure, like government facilities, for example, right? That you need power to continue operating the various different security systems that are in place, whether that's,
Mhm.
automatic locks or electric doors, however, whatever they're using. I mean, so like, obviously I'm thinking of like, okay, where are all of the, elite rich magnates who want to have like energy solutions for their compounds, right?
Right.
But there's like that's the
Yeah.
me like going off into like writing a movie
Right.
kind of
Or
storyline.
or people that are building bunkers for like World War IV or something like that, because that's the whole conversation too. But again, like, there's other people that are like, oh, well, how can where do I invest, or where could I go get a hydrogen solution that's going to power my bunker, or exactly what Haley said. That's an interesting, fun question, Haley.
Well, I mean, are there maybe places, so like when you think of it in terms of like security and that kind of
Mhm,
thing, I mean,
mhm,
where are maybe the places that you would again see this solution being, I say government buildings is one of the first things I think of, but what are
mhm,
some of maybe the other industries that you're seeing where this is something that would be a benefit for that security reason?
I think military bases are one that is certainly something that we are taking an eye on. They have a need, and it's a national security issue in order for us to continue to power those military bases. And they can't just be reliant on a local grid that could potentially be shut down or targeted in act of terrorism, for example, um, to specifically stop the operations of that military base. That is definitely an area that we are considering in terms of showcasing our solution as a way to power under both emergency or backup power circumstances, or just as a traditional operation of the military base itself. So that's a key factor when you're talking about private-public partnerships. It's also about being able to power that base consistently from that perspective, and being able to have the logistics necessary for you to transport your feedstock in and out. One of the great things about our feedstock is it's present everywhere, and it's very easy to move. So it's not something that is a rare earth metal or a nuclear type of material. Very easy to move aluminum, very easy to move sodium hydroxide. It's moved every single day. So it's very hard for an enemy to try and target your logistics stream if it's everywhere, right?
mhm,
So that's one of the nice features about our technology is our feedstock itself kind of camouflages itself.
mhm, mm.
Well, that's like again another just like this solution kind of sells itself. That's so very amazingly
Yeah,
cool.
I'm
So
sold.
that I'm sold 100%. Well, so like that the supplies that you need then, like if we could maybe just dive into that just a little bit further, because again, people think about like nuclear waste or nuclear energy and the kind of dangerous materials that go into that. Can you maybe talk just a little bit about like the different sort of supply chain materials and the things that go into your energy solution and stations that make it safer and more green for, and again, less easy to sort of have the supply chain be affected by, you know, on the one end, there's like that, the terrorism angle that's really awful. But even just things like, the tariff things that we see or
Mhm,
the different, ports or different places that have strikes and things like that, the things that can sometimes slow down supply chains.
Sure. So our main feedstocks are aluminum and sodium hydroxide. Aluminum coming from bauxite, which is one of the most common parts of the Earth crust, is actually bauxite. Then it's taken from bauxite and turned into alumina, and then from alumina, you take a lot of electricity and it's turned into aluminum, and that's how you get to that metal. So aluminum is not actually present on the Earth's crust as its current uh, metal form. It requires humanity in order for us to, and a large amount of electricity in order for us to actually have the aluminum element. So for that reason, the mass production of aluminum has become a major focal point for the ability for us to have a modern economy. And the fact that it can react with water to generate that heat and the electricity from the heat, and then also release hydrogen, is a really big key component for how we wanted to pursue this opportunity. The other feedstock is sodium hydroxide in a aqueous form, which you get from electrolyzing or putting electricity through seawater. So seawater, again, very common. We have a lot of seawater in Earth's planet. We're not going to run out of seawater anytime soon. So it's a very common and abundant feedstock system that we can rely upon for many, many generations. That is a core of what I wanted to look for in terms of having a potential transition fuel is, are we going to run out of it? Why propose something that we're going to run out of in a short period of time? So we're not going to be running out of aluminum or sodium hydroxide in the near future. It's obviously, when you're talking to a customer, that's one of the things that they ask. One of the first things that they ask is, what does your supply chain look like? Are you going to be running out? Because we can't have an operation that we implement and then our supply chain breaks down, the feedstock is not there. So that's one of the things that we have to showcase is the aluminum industry is very well developed. It's here to stay, and it's only going to get bigger. So there's going to be more aluminum next year than the year prior, and that will always be the case.
Right.
That's a really critical thing that we need to say over and over again and educate the populace about, while we're looking at this as a really instrumental, transformative technology.
That's amazing. I like the fact that we are going, back in time and using, of course, our natural resources, the seawater and hydrogen. It's a natural source that our planet offers, and that can be made. That's amazing.
We do appreciate that, being able to actually use the natural resources that we have available.
Hmm.
And there's a little bit of, mindset, I think, to, I mean, Alicia and I, obviously, we talk about this all the time. Having the right mindset gets you to the right places, kind of thing. So I do also appreciate just the fact that this hydrogen energy solution does have so many benefits in such a positive way that obviously show
Yes.
that, you do have a mindset of prosperity and thriving for everyone, that, like, this energy solution you created because you wanted good things for the planet. So let's
Hmm.
maybe just, like, let's dive into that part of it just a little bit. Like, I know
Yeah,
we talked
I was
about it
going.
before.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Well, you asked your question first, and I'll ask my question later. But when people are thinking about the concept of, oh, we may run out, like when you're speaking of oil and gas, how many drills are they, like, drilling into the planet to get the oil? And, like, is there a possibility that we're going to run out of oil one day? Maybe, maybe not. We will see. But I was going to ask, like, as far as the people that are kind of having that pushback on that type of mindset of, this is available. This is always going to be available. We're never going to run out of, like, seawater. What what's the origin, I would say, the country or city where you're getting that pushback from people? And then the question following up of that, what kind of partners or allies are you kind of looking for to help you scale this solution globally?
So we get that conversation everywhere.
Mm,
They want to make sure that the solution is going to be for the long term, if they're going to
mm,
be putting in the type of money necessary for them to actually implement it.
mm,
So that's definitely something that is, we see that type of questioning everywhere. Um, Mostly on the aluminum side, the sodium hydroxide is availability is more widely known. It's a more widely known chemical in a lot of industrial processes, as opposed to just the aluminum metal. So they want to make sure that that feedstock supply is going to be there for the long term, and they don't make this transition and then have to transition back to something else, uh, or find some other way to power their operations. So that's really critical. and it is a worldwide phenomenon in terms of customers that we've talked to that have that specific concern.
Hmm.
Well,
Interesting.
and that's I was going to say the mindset that you have though of looking for the abundant solutions, right? I think again, it's that is the kind of energy in the sense of, you know, I don't know, spiritual energy, like just the kind of energy you want people to come from for these kinds of solutions, right? So for you yourself and just being excited about this as an energy solution, like what is it that keeps you passionate about implementing this, about continuing to find new ways that this can be used? Like what makes Walt excited about Allied Power?
So it is a intellectually difficult and challenging thing to educate so many people about something from the ground up that they hadn't really thought about to date. Because essentially what you're trying to showcase is finding you mentioned spiritual energy, but it's essentially you're trying to find an energy source that people don't see as an energy source, and now you're trying to teach them that it actually is, because within it contains, and it's a great energy carrier. But when people look at aluminum or your can of Coke, they're not seeing a battery. They don't see uh, a gas can. That's just something that they don't see until you make them see that. And that intellectual process is certainly something that makes me get up in the morning and figure out, am I explaining this the best way possible? Can I find another way, another pathway to get people to recognize it and have resonance with this as a technology solution? So that's certainly something that keeps me up and makes me excited to go to work every day. Is how do we translate from the initial spark of the solution and what it can be to, can we actually implement this? The the conversations that I've been having quite recently with customers about just the logistics and how it's going to work for their facilities have been really, really intriguing for me, because there is that educational step, that it's not just you explain it once and everybody immediately agrees. Business does not work like that. It's certainly a process, and you have to convince people that your solution is going to work for them. And it might just be a matter of, in Canada, for example, it snows a lot. And if it snows a lot, then the solar panels that people are going to put on their fields are going to get covered up in snow. And somebody has to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning and wipe the snow off the solar panel, right?
No,
So,
thank you. I don't want. I'm not going to volunteer for that.
so wouldn't a solution that doesn't require that as a logistic necessity be something that would be transformative for the people that live there? It might be a solution that only needs to power 3,000 homes because that's the entirety of their village. But you know, if it's a matter of this electricity needs to be there or they freeze, then it's very, very important that that system is going to work for them. So that's something that we are working through with our logistics teams to showcase how our technology is going to work even at very, very low temperatures, and that it can work in low temperatures, and that it can work and provide that consistency of power and electricity for the populace. So that's definitely something that we work on at an everyday manner, and we welcome the challenge that those different circumstances will apply.
See, now I'm thinking though, we just have to, what we need to do to educate the masses is write a FrankiVerse like character of Walt. You're going to have your awesome hat and be in a rock and rad suit, and you'll go around the world with like Amax and her character, and you'll teach everybody about the Ally, but we're going to do an animated version of it, is what I'm saying. It's going to be great. That's how
Oh,
so that at
yes.
least when
I'm
you're
open.
giving that information to your clients, it's entertaining too, right? Like, listen, it's a
Right.
cartoon, but it's about the real stuff. So like, here,
Yeah.
this will make it easier to absorb the information.
The
Yeah.
edutainment.
Also, yes,
That's right.
exactly. And also to point out, as far as the you saying challenge a lot, it's always a challenge to convince people that, like, to convince them of the solution that they haven't been taught. From young age to now, it's like people are used to the oil and gas. They're now opening up to the idea of like Tesla and like electric cars and things like that. But there's still a disconnect of like, okay, if I have a Tesla, do I have a charging station? How am I going to get around? It's a consistent conversation. But what they're doing with these types of energy solutions and these self-driving cars, they are opening it up the concept of like, this is a possibility. This is the future is going to look like. It's all about the investment of, applying those charging stations everywhere, like all across the globe or all across America, right? So my question for you, Walt, with Allied Power, if you could sit down with the CEO of Shell, Exxon, or Tesla, what would you say to them? What would the message that you would want them to hear with your influence with Allied Power?
Well, Shell has already tried hydrogen refueling stations in California, for example, and they had to shut them down
Mm,
because of the rising costs of those hydrogen stations, lack of
mm,
demand for the hydrogen, uh, logistics issues. That there were a lot of complications in regards to their choice of technology. I like to use this word that I made up called tection, uh,
okay.
which, which is I call it that because it's kind of like the choice of technology, right? Like diction, choice of words, and your choice of technology is really important when you're trying to decide which solution you want to provide. The So if I were going to be in the same room and having a conversation with those CEOs, I would say that there are advantages to the technologies that you've used in the past, but they also have some severe disadvantages which have led to certain complications within either your internal operations or have had outward effects that are disadvantageous to the rest of the community, which we've
Mhm,
talked about before in terms of brownouts, blackouts with electric battery charging. So if you're going to have a source of a energy that can provide stable baseload power, but also have transportation uh, advantages in terms of how you're going to be transporting goods and services back and forth with clean hydrogen. If you're making potable water for the surrounding community, all these are really great ways to implement your technology solution in a way that is not going to negatively impact the environment or the people who are living in those communities. And that's really what you want to do, is have that same level of human civilization that we have all gotten accustomed to without impacting negatively either the planet or the people who live on it. And that's an important thing to always bear in mind when you are choosing the technology behind your revolution.
mhm.
I love
Oh,
that. I love it when
yeah,
people make up words. That's some of my favorites. So now we've got
right?
tection, like I
Protection.
love that.
I
Choice
like
of
that.
technology. That is very important.
Add that to the Frankie Podcast Network vocabulary box.
I know, right? We're writing a dictionary. I'm excited. We'll
Yes,
include Walt as a co-author now. We got all kinds of fun new words from our. I love it.
yes.
So
I
good.
would Uh,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Haley. I was gonna end on a vision drop for the Nora effect. So since we're all about vision and impact here, what does the future of fuel look like for Ally Power and how is it going to succeed?
So the future of fuel for us is kind of an all of the above approach in terms of our technology deployment. We think that our technology can fit in a number of different industries to provide the solutions that people need to get around, to power their systems, to power their infrastructure. So it really is an all of the above approach. We think that targeting specific industries in the initial phase to showcase success stories is going to be really critical, because it can have a snowball effect when you are able to showcase in one geographic area that you have a funded project and people believe in your technology. So it becomes I'm not the first person to do this. I'm not the first person to fund this. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon of success stories, and I want to be a part of the Ally Power story. I want to be a part of the Ally Power solution. I want to be a part of Ally Power. So that's really
Yes.
critical when we're trying to showcase our successes, is to have that continuation of momentum while we're progressing.
Thank you for that powerful message. And we're happy to support the Allied Power Vision as our wonderful selves, me and Haley, right, girl?
Absolutely. I am so excited that we get to chat with you about these kind of questions, because, again,
Mhm.
I'm just amazed that there is such a thing as this energy solution that has so many different good things available to it for the planet, for the people who implement it, for the people who utilize the things that come from it. I just think it's wonderful. So I'm super excited that you've joined us for another Vynora Effect episode. We are at an hour. We want to be mindful of your time, because we know you're busy running around and saving the world with your energy solution, and we appreciate that you're doing that. But is there anywhere, we'll have, the website for Ally Power and for folks to find you on LinkedIn in the description below. But is there anything else you'd want to direct folks to that you might have coming up, or anything you'd like them to check out right now?
I just would showcase the website again, and my LinkedIn is always a really great way to get in contact with me. We do have some internship programs as well that we are implementing within the company. So if people want to learn about the solution, they want to think about coming on board to be a part of Ally Power, that's always something that we are looking to grow our talented team in a number of different ways. So that would be something as a message I would like to leave everybody with today.
Awesome. Well, do check it out, folks. In the description below, we'll have all the links for you. And hey, any of you who are bright, brilliant minded folks who want to go and be an intern and learn, I mean, Amax, maybe we'll have to go be interns at Ally Power for a little bit
I
just to learn
agree.
more for fun.
I'd
I love
be
it.
I'd be very open to that, and just getting all the education about Ally Power and where you see it. And I totally believe in this vision of this is the future, and you're holding the key at the moment. We are more than happy to support and have our listeners and all the people that are in our network support Ally Power as well. So thank you so much, Walt, for joining the Vynora Effect, and we look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank
I
you very
love
much,
it.
Alicia. Thank you, Haley. Hope
Thank
to meet you
Thank you.
soon.
you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. And do check out Frankie's Podcast Network on YouTube for all the awesome podcasts we have. And you'll see more of Walt and more of Alicia and more of me on upcoming podcasts, y'all. And I know you want to. Big love bubbles to everybody out there for listening. Thanks
Thank
for joining us
you.
on the Vynora Effect.
Mhm.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.